So picture this. It's like 3 a.m., right? And a doctor's reading a medical chart, and they just mentally drop a silent P in a diagnosis where they really shouldn't.
Yeah, which is, incredibly easy to do when you're exhausted.
Exactly. But it doesn't just mean they, like, failed a vocabulary test. Because of these completely bizarre, basically 400-year-old rules of medical English, that tiny little phonetic slip-up could actually result in, a lethal dose of the wrong medication being pulled from a pharmacy.
Right. It's a massive safety issue.
It really is. So welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are taking this massive stack of educational texts and really fascinating linguistic history and medical safety protocols to decode a system that honestly just looks completely broken.
It really does. I mean, we're looking at the secret rules of silent letters and these tricky sounds in medical terminology.
Yeah, because our mission today is to prove to you, the curious learner listening right now, that those totally unpronounceable words on your lab results, they are not random typos.
No, they are not. Even though, honestly, they look like someone just smashed their hands on a keyboard.
Right. Like, why does pneumonia start with a P?
Exactly. When you see a word like pneumonia starting with a P, your first instinct is to just assume the English language is playing a prank on you.
Totally.
But underneath all that apparent chaos, there is actually a highly rigorous,
Right.
entirely predictable system.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. We're talking about a set of rules that dictates precisely how to pronounce a word you have literally never seen before in your life.
So the blueprint for this deep dive is we're going to bypass the whole rote memorization thing entirely. We are going to explore the historical collision that forced these Frankenstein words into existence.
Yes.
We're going to uncover this hidden location rule that dictates, when a letter speaks and when it stays silent. And we'll look at how vowels act like these chemical reagents to just alter the consonants around them.
It's super fascinating.
But, okay, we can't start with the rules. We have to start with the glitch in this system. Because looking through our sources, I think the most shocking revelation for me was that these silent letters they were never actually meant to be silent.
No, they weren't. And that is the crucial, first principles concept you really need to grasp to make sense of any of this.
Okay.
To understand modern medical English, you actually have to look at classical Greek phonology.
Right. Back to the ancient Greeks.
Exactly. So in ancient Greece, the language was built on these consonant clusters, like two heavy consonants sitting literally shoulder to shoulder at the very beginning of a word.
Like what?
So you had PS in a word like psyche, which means mind or soul.
Oh, okay.
You had PN in pneuma, meaning breath. You had GNN, gnosis, meaning knowledge. And for an ancient Greek speaker, both of those letters were 100% audible.
That is just wild to me. Like, their vocal mechanics were just built for it. They were literally walking around the agora saying, poo and ooh and poochie. Just articulating both sounds without even missing a beat.
They articulated it effortlessly. The P wasn't this silent prefix, right?
Yeah.
It was an active, driving part of the syllable.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating here is that, for a long time, English speakers actually had similar vocal habits.
Wait, really? We did?
We did. If you look at Old and Middle English, everyday citizens were perfectly comfortable pronouncing initial consonant clusters.
Okay, actually, I noticed this connection in the linguistic history notes. Words we use every single day, like night spelled K-N-I-G-H-T, or knee, or gnaw.
Exactly.
Those weren't just weird spellings. For centuries, English speakers were audibly hitting the K and the G. Like they were saying K-knee and K-night.
Yes. Well into the 1600s, that was just standard pronunciation.
That is so strange to think about.
It really is. But then, this massive phonetic shift happened. There's this famous Danish linguist, Otto Jespersen, who extensively mapped the history of English pronunciation.
Yep.
And he documented this phenomenon where everyday English speakers basically just decided that these heavy clusters were, too much physical effort.
They just got lazy.
Kind of, yeah. Between the late 16th and early 18th centuries, this principle of least effort basically took over.
Wow.
The English mouth simply dropped the first consonant. It became a hard rule of English phonotactics.
Phonotactics, meaning like the permissible sound combinations in our language.
Right. English fundamentally outlawed those specific heavy sounds at the start of a word.
Which perfectly sets up this historical collision because my favorite analogy for this whole thing is video game hardware.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. So the Greek language had the hardware, like the vocal tract programming to run those complex sound clusters.
Yeah.
And English used to have simile hardware, but then it essentially updated its operating system and just deleted that capability.
Perfectly said.
And right at the exact moment the English console, lost the ability to play those sounds, these trailblazing Renaissance physicians decided to import thousands of new Greek terms.
Yeah, talk about bad timing, right?
Yeah.
You see this with figures like William Harvey, who was the first to map the circulatory system.
Right.
Or Thomas Willis, the physician who actually coined the term neurology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these were Latin-educated men, but they were reaching back into ancient Greek texts, the works of Galen and Hippocrates, to build this modern scientific vocabulary.
But why Greek? Why not just stick to Latin?
Well, they favored Greek because it acts like linguistic Lego blocks.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can take these highly specific roots and snap them together to describe entirely new diseases or anatomical structures.
Okay, so the Greek cartridge gets jammed into this incompatible English console.
Exactly.
The spelling remained Greek, which preserves the visual history of the word, but the pronunciation just totally crashed.
It completely crashed. The English mouth physically couldn't run the software anymore, so the first letter just went dead.
It just went silent. And that phonetic glitch was permanently locked into stone later on, right, in 1895.
Yes, by an agreement called the Basel Nomina Anatomica.
Okay, what was that exactly?
It was the first internationally agreed upon list of anatomical terms. Medicine was, globalizing at the time, and scientists really needed a standardized vocabulary.
Right, so everyone is on the same page.
Exactly. So they formally codified all the traditional Greek and Latin spellings for thousands of body parts and diseases. They immortalized those silent letter spellings in international law, essentially.
Wow.
And this was long after the English-speaking world had actually stopped pronouncing those leading consonants.
Which brings us out of the history books and directly to the practical problem for you, the listener.
Right.
Because if that spelling is permanently locked in, how do you read a medical chart today without just, brute force memorizing a dictionary?
It seems impossible.
It does, because if I'm studying this and I see that P is silent in pneumonia, my first assumption is just that, well, P is always silent before N.
That's what everyone assumes.
Right. But diving into the source material, I realized that is entirely wrong. The silence actually has nothing to do with the letters themselves.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the specific letters.
It's crazy.
The entire system pivots on location. The silence is governed strictly by where that consonant cluster sits within the architecture of the word.
Okay, so let's break down this location rule. Because from what I'm seeing, if a heavy cluster like PS, PN, PT, or GN is sitting at the very start of a word, it hits that English phonotactic wall we talked about.
Right.
The first consonant is dropped, so pneumonia starts with PN, the P is silent. Psychology starts with PS, the P goes quiet.
That is the baseline rule. Word initial position equals a dropped consonant.
Okay.
But the twist, the mechanism that trips up almost every single beginner in a biology class, happens when that exact same cluster shifts its position.
Okay, how so?
If you take that PN or PS and place it in the middle of a medical term, that phonetic wall just vanishes.
Right, really.
Yes. You pronounce both letters fully.
Which feels completely counterintuitive until you actually look at the mechanics of the syllables. Let's look at a concrete example using the suffix pnea, spelled P-N-E-A,
Okay.
which refers to breath. By itself, or starting a word, the P is silent. You say, new M-O-W-N, yeah.
Right.
But if you take the medical term for a temporary cessation of breathing sleep apnea, it's spelled A-P-N-E-A.
And notice what happens to the rhythm of the word there. The cluster is medial now. The syllable boundary splits right down the center of those two consonants.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you say A-N-E-A. The P latches onto the first vowel, and the N latches onto the second.
That makes so much sense.
Because they aren't forced to share the start of the same syllable anymore, the English mouth has no problem pronouncing them. Suddenly, that silent P wakes up and is totally audible.
A-P-N-E, you hear the P clear as day, and you see this pattern repeating across the entire dictionary.
Everywhere.
Like, take dyspnea, the term for shortness of breath, spelled D-Y-S-P-N-E-A. You don't drop the P and say dyspnea.
No, you don't.
The syllable splits it. You say dyspnea, both consonants fire.
Exactly. And it applies to the GN cluster as well.
Okay.
So think of the root nathic, relating to the jaw, spelled Gnathic. Word initial, the G is silent. You just say ick.
Right.
But if an orthodontist describes a protruding jaw, they add a prefix. It becomes prognathic. The cluster moves to the middle, the syllables divide the work, and the G is pronounced. Prognatic.
It totally reminds me of a strict bouncer at the door of, like, an exclusive club.
Huh, I like that.
If those two consonants show up together at the front door, the start of the word, the bouncer looks at them and says, English rules, only one of you gets in.
Exactly.
The first consonant gets turned away. But if those exact same consonants are already inside the club, hanging out in the VIT section in the middle of the word, the bouncer has no jurisdiction.
Right, they're already in.
He leaves them alone, the syllable boundary separates them, and they both get to speak.
That bouncer analogy perfectly captures the mechanics of phonotactics. Once you internalize the difference between the front door and the VIP section, so initial versus medial position, you have a universal rule. You never have to guess whether a P or a G is silent again.
But the consonants are only like half the battle here, because looking deeper into the medical terminology code, the vowels are doing some serious heavy lifting too.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't just sit there. They act like chemical regents, fundamentally altering the structure of the letters C and G depending on where they are dropped.
They do. This is known as the soft and hard rule. In medical English, the letters C and G change their pronunciation entirely based on the vowel that immediately follows them.
Oh, okay.
The vowel dictates the phonetic state of the consonant.
Well, let's run the formula then. If I'm synthesizing the sources correctly, the vowels E, I, and Y act as softening agents.
Correct.
If C or G comes right before one of those three, their sound softens. A soft C sounds like an S, and a soft G sounds like a J.
You can see that playing out in all sorts of foundational anatomical terms. Take a word
Okay.
like cervix.
Right.
The C is followed by an E, so the regent softens it into an S sound.
Right.
Or the word gene. G followed by E softens into a J sound. Cytoplasm C followed by a Y softens to an S.
Then you just flip the formula. If the C or G comes right before an A, an O, or a U, the chemical reaction makes them hard.
Yes.
A hard C turns into a K sound, and a hard G acts like a standard heavy G.
Exactly.
So, cardiac.
Yeah.
C followed by A gives you a hard K, colon, gastric gonad.
There you go.
If you just memorize this one vowel dichotomy, the EIY softeners versus the AOU hardeners, you can predict the sound of thousands of complex terms basically on site.
It completely demystifies the reading process. You move from intimidated memorization to active prediction.
I am fully on board with the predictive power of this, I really am, but I have to push back on the absoluteness of these rules for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because scanning the most common medical fields, there is a glaring exception staring us right in the face.
I think I know what you're going to say.
What about the word gynecology?
Yep, there it is.
It starts with GY. According to the chemical regent rule we just learned, G followed by Y should soften into a J.
It absolutely should.
It should behave exactly like gyrate or gyroscope or gymnasium, but no medical professional says gyno, K-O-L-U-G.
Definitely not.
It retains a hard G. So if the system is so rigorous, why does the code fail on such a massive everyday word?
It is the ultimate thorn in the side of medical linguists, honestly. Gynecology is what we call a fossilized historical exception.
A fossilized exception.
Yeah. The rules of language are powerful, but language is also deeply cultural. The field of gynecology was heavily formalized and advanced in 19th century Germany and Scotland.
Okay.
And in the German language, they pronounce their G's hard, regardless of the following vowel.
So that specific hard G pronunciation was imported into English medical schools alongside the actual scientific breakthroughs.
Exactly. It became a marker of professional expertise to pronounce it the German way. If you said it with a hard G, it meant you were up on the latest science. And it just calcified before the English vowel rules could override it.
So the glitch wasn't phonetic, it was sociological.
Yes.
The doctors adopted the accent of the experts they were reading, and it just got baked into the English medical culture.
Exactly right.
It goes to show that while the decoding ring works, 99% of the time, you still have to respect the high-frequency outliers that carry their own historical baggage.
Always respect the historical rebels. The system is a framework. It's not a straitjacket.
Well, speaking of rebels, digging into these outliers leads us directly to the wildest, most unpronounceable digraphs in the dictionary.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to talk about words that look like a cat literally walked across a keyboard, we have to look at the edge cases of Greek translation.
These are the ones that cause actual panic during oral exams. Take the letter X, for example.
Yeah.
When an X starts a Greek-derived medical term, it entirely abandons its usual KS sound, and it's pronounced like a G.
Like the xiphoid process. That's the delicate little cartilage tip at the base of the sternum, the one they always warn you not to snap off during CPR training.
Yes, exactly.
Spelled Xipchoid. You don't say xiphoid. The X operates as a Z, zyphoid.
Right. And you also have the CH digraph being pronounced as a hard K, as in cholesterol or chronic.
Oh, right, because of the Greek origin.
Yes, in original Greek, that letter was a chi, which was articulated deep in the throat, closer to a K. It was never the soft chi sound we use in the English word chair.
Okay.
And then the letters EU at the start of a word combine to make a U sound, like anopnia, which means normal, unlabored breathing.
I actually love the word apnea because it perfectly stacks the rules we just learned.
It really does.
You have the EU making the U sound at the front door, and then the nia suffix is sitting in the VIP section in the medial position, so the bouncer lets the P speak. Yoop, N-E-uh. It is incredibly satisfying when the mechanics lock together like that. But we have to address the final boss of medical spelling from our source material.
Oh boy.
This is the word that defies absolutely everything. Phthisis.
It is a phenomenal example of linguistic decay. So phthisis was an archaic Greek term for a wasting disease, specifically pulmonary tuberculosis.
It is spelled Phthhisis. 4 consecutive consonants.
Yep.
It looks fundamentally impossible for a human mouth to articulate.
And yet, in the 19th century, tuberculosis was one of the leading causes of death globally.
Right.
Doctors were writing this word on literally millions of death certificates and medical charts. It was an everyday utterance, but how do you actually say it?
Well, let's run it through the system. You have photh at the front door. If we follow the bouncer rule, the front of the cluster should drop.
Right, but it takes it a step further. In this highly unusual case, because the articulators in the human mouth physically cannot transition from an F sound, the PH to a TH to a T in one fluid motion, the entire PH unit drops out. It goes completely silent.
So you jettison the P and the H entirely. That just leaves the TH and the ISIS. So a 19th century doctor just called it phthisis?
Phthisis. They said it effortlessly dozens of times a day. But today, a medical student confronts PHTH on a historical document or a board exam, and their brain just, like, blue screens.
Which begs the ultimate pragmatic question for you, the listener. If this system is this convoluted, I mean, if we are relying on bouncers and chemical reagents and dropping whole chunks of letters just to accommodate a dead language, why on earth hasn't modern medicine just fixed it?
It's a great question.
Like, why not update the spelling to match the modern phonetic sounds and save every single medical student a massive headache?
Well, they actually tried to do exactly that.
Did they really?
Yes, and it resulted in one of the most spectacular historical failures of the 20th century.
Oh, wow.
In 1906, this movement emerged called the Simplified Spelling Board. It was financially bankrolled by Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, and championed by massive cultural figures like Mark Twain. Their goal was to strip the English language of all these archaic, unnecessary silent letters. They wanted to fundamentally rewrite the dictionary, so words were spelled exactly how they sounded in modern times.
Honestly, that sounds incredibly logical. If a word sounds like pneumonia with an N, just spell it with an N.
Right. And the momentum was so strong that it actually reached the White House. President Theodore Roosevelt was a massive advocate.
Rufus-spell.
Yeah. He actually issued an executive order mandating that the U.S. government printing office adopt 300 of these newly simplified spellings immediately in all federal documents.
Wait, an executive order for spelling reform? How did the country react to that?
With utter hostility.
Oh, yeah.
It completely collapsed. The public reaction was brutal. Newspapers like the New York Times mercilessly mocked the president, and Congress essentially revolted.
That is hilarious.
The Supreme Court even refused to read documents printed in the new spellings.
Yeah.
Within months, Roosevelt was humiliated and had to quietly withdraw the order. But the resistance from the medical and scientific communities wasn't just about, political stubbornness. They fought the reform for a very specific, vital reason called etymological transparency.
Etymological transparency, meaning the history of the word has to remain visible in the spelling, even if it's invisible in the sound.
Precisely. If you delete the silent P from the prefix pneumo and spell it N-O-O-O-M-O, you destroy the international visual language of science.
Oh, I see.
A doctor in France, a doctor in Germany, and a doctor in the United States all pronounce medical terms differently because of their local accents.
Right, of course.
But when they read a global medical journal, that weird Greek spelling of pneumo is instantly recognized by all of them as the root word for lung. The silent letters are the universal anchor.
I genuinely never considered that. The silent letters are actually the glue holding international scientific communication together.
Exactly.
Because if you localize the spelling to American phonetics, a German researcher wouldn't even be able to read an American medical paper.
Right. It preserves a shared visual language, which is far more important for global medicine than phonetic convenience.
But that historical lock-in creates a massive modern problem, and this is where it connects directly back to you, the patient, and why this isn't just, academic trivia.
It really isn't.
Mispronouncing these words doesn't just make a medical student look foolish, it actively causes real-world harm.
It is a critical safety issue. The Institute for Safe Medication Practices, the ISMP, actively tracks something called ELESA errors.
What does that stand for?
It stands for look-alike, sound-alike drugs.
Because the pharmaceutical industry builds brand names using these exact same Greek and Latin prefixes, right?
Exactly. So imagine a high-stress clinical environment. It's 3 a.m., a nurse is fatigued, and they're taking a verbal order from a doctor over a terrible phone connection.
Recipe for disaster.
If a clinician misunderstands the rules we've discussed today, if they mispronounce a vowel or guess at a silent consonant, the wrong drug can be pulled. A slight mispronunciation can turn a respiratory medication into a cardiac medication.
That is terrifying.
The brain, especially when tired, latches on to those phonetic similarities, and catastrophic errors happen.
And we aren't just relying on human ears anymore. What happens when these ancient, fossilized spellings collide with modern medical voice transcription software?
Oh, it is a massive vulnerability in electronic health records right now. Doctors dictate notes into AI-driven transcription software to save time.
Right.
But if a physician mispronounces a term with a tricky silent letter, the software's algorithm gets confused. It guesses phonetically and inserts the wrong word.
Which then becomes permanent.
Exactly. That transcription error is now permanently baked into the patient's electronic health record.
Yeah.
It can follow a patient for years, causing immense confusion for the next specialist who inherits that chart.
Not to mention the immediate impact on the clinician-patient relationship. Like if a doctor walks into your hospital room and confidently tells you that you are suffering from sore eye keratosis instead of psoriasis, it instantly fractures their credibility.
It really does.
As a patient, you are sitting in that bed thinking, wait, do they even know what's wrong with me?
Right.
And on the educational side, nursing and pharmacy students frequently fail oral licensing board exams because they stumble over these exact clusters.
Because for generations, medical education just handed them a dictionary and said, memorize it, instead of teaching them the underlying structural system.
Which is exactly what we set out to correct today.
Yeah.
Let's summarize this decoding ring we've built. Learning these rules isn't about memorizing dead languages to sound elite.
No.
It is about acquiring a universal framework for reading. Once you understand the bouncer rule, that a consonant cluster loses its first letter at the start of a word but keeps both if they are split by a syllable in the middle.
Yes.
Once you understand that the vowels E, I, and Y act as chemical regents to soften a C or a G, you are free. You move from intimidated memorization to active prediction.
Exactly.
You can encounter a respiratory term you have literally never seen before, recognize the PN root, apply the location rule, and read it perfectly.
It gives you mastery over the information, rather than letting the information master you.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, building on that transcription software vulnerability we just discussed.
Okay.
We know that these fossilized 17th century Greek spellings are currently causing critical errors in cutting-edge voice dictation systems at hospitals around the world.
They absolutely are.
So, looking to the future of healthcare, who is going to have to blink first? Are we going to have to spend millions training the next generation of artificial intelligence models to think like 17th century Latin scholars, programming them to anticipate our phonetic glitches just to safely transcribe patient records?
Right.
Or will the rise of AI dictation and the absolute demand for flawless medical algorithms finally be the tipping point? Will AI force the medical community to abandon etymological transparency and simplify the spellings, finally finishing the job that Teddy Roosevelt and Andrew Carnegie couldn't do in 1906?
Wow. It raises a profound question about whether our modern technology will eventually be forced to conform to our linguistic history, or if it will be the hammer that finally shatters it.
It really does. So the next time you're reviewing a lab result or reading your chart and you hit a word that looks like a chaotic keyboard smash, just remember, it's not chaos. It's a highly rigorous code. And now you possess the key to read it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep decoding the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.